Okay, so when you log into, again, into Cayuse for the first time, you're going to see this screen. We're going to go up to the top right and pick our product selector. And I've always said it's good to go through sponsored projects so we can actually find the routing sheet, the Cayuse SP routing sheet. I kind of use those terms interchangeably. I'm looking through everybody's today. I did a few today. I've got one that I was working on, so I'm going to pick mine right here. You guys, if you can find your proposal, you can open it up and we'll continue working. Let me know if you can't find it. And at the bottom of the screen, when you pull up your proposal and proposals SP, there is a link to your proposal's S2S record. And all you have to do is click on that record and it should open up the proposal we were working on previously. I believe a couple of you were on this morning, so it should be pretty easy for you to find, I'm guessing. I'll just wait a second for everybody to get here. Okay. So to recap what we talked about this morning or earlier in the week, depending on when you joined, I went over the navigation of every page about how these 1, 2, this is page 1 and page 2 of this form. Previously, we filled out every single form except the budget form and the subaward budget. So today we're going to be covering both of those. I'm going to start by talking about the budget. So if we go to the budget section here and click on page 1, we're going to see the first page of the R&R budget. Some navigation tips here. Again, these are page 1, 2, and 3, and 4 over here. But in addition to these 4 pages, up at the top, you'll see a drop down for a budget period. So we're only looking at budget period 1 right now. Budget period 1 has these 3 pages to it. If I move to budget period 2 by selecting a drop down option, it'll go to budget period 2 and 3 and 4. Instead of doing the drop down, you can always use these arrows to the left and right. So you can just go back and forth like that. So you can look at each budget period. And each one of those budget periods has 3 pages to it. So this could be quite a large budget depending on how many budget periods you have. I'm also going to open my chat here and keep it next to my screen so I can keep an eye on it. If you guys have any questions about what we're doing today, drop it in chat or just interrupt. That's fine. This is going to be a very open discussion we have today because there might be some concepts we need to talk about. So I can see previously that the only things we've done in budget, I'm going to make sure I'm in budget period 1, is I see the PIs, the key persons we entered before. I remember this morning, we put in the PI, we put in me as the PI. There's Walter Ward. We had Nick Lopez as the co-investigator. Just to show you what happens if I go to the next budget period and you keep an eye on look at my funds requested. As I'm going through each budget period, you're seeing it going up because if you remember when we were in key persons before, we escalated my budget in here. So let me just show you again what that looked like. We went in and we escalated my budget by 3% every year. So that in turn took care of the budgeting for all 5 budget periods. The first thing I do before we get into filling out the rest of this, I'd like to talk about what happens if we need to add a co-investigator or PI, any investigator that has a an academic/summer appointment. There's a little bit of a thing we have to do with this, so pay attention to this and we'll talk about it. And I'll have Tammy help explain some of this right now. The first thing we're going to do is if I want to change any of these key persons, I could manage them right here within the budget, but I've always found it works better if I go back to the key persons and go to manage key persons from there. It's just a better layout. I kind of like the way it looks better. So for this one, what I'm going to do, and if you guys want to do this as well, I'm going to remove Nick Lopez from this as the co-investigator. And all I do to do that is click remove key person. It'll give you a warning saying, do you really want to remove this key person from the proposal? It'll take all of their information out of the budget and remove that. Just to show you, when I look at the budget, it did remove him from all areas of the budget as well. So in key persons, we're going to use the pencil icon at the top, and we're going to click add key person. This time we're going to pick somebody with that academic / summer appointment. So we're going to search for someone named Fehrenbach. If you type in the letters Fehren, just search for part of his last name and click search. He should show up here. Again, best practice, if there was a bunch of people that happen to have that combination of letters in their name, you would filter it out by investigator, so you make sure you have the right person. But he's the only one that shows up. This is who we'll be using. All you do is highlight their name and add them into the key persons. We're going to go ahead and add the bio sketch as is normal. I'm going to click add, go to final, add their bio sketch. The role I'm going to put as the co-investigator. So here's the part where it requires a little bit of extra work. Previously, if I minimize him and show mine, it shows me my default base salary that's brought in by the system these are all fake salaries, by the way. It brings in this 120,000, which I escalated over 5 years, but I was on a calendar appointment type. So the academic and summer base salaries and academic and summer months requested were all grayed out. But if I go up to Chris Fehrenbach, he has the opposite. He does not have calendar salary. He is on an academic / summer salary. So I'm going to show you how this works. A quick little tip here. If you're working with someone that has summer salary requested, we're going to need a special calculation to be done. And we have a little cheat sheet that was made for us, and I'm going to show you where it is. If I were to go navigate back over to Cayuse SP, inside the summary budget, again, you might want to be working on budgets at the same time between both modules, but in summary budget, we added the summer salary and fringe calculator. And it's available here for anybody to download, or it can be emailed to you if you need it. And you basically open this up and download it to your computer, and this will give you a quick way to fill in some of the blanks here when we work with the summer fringe rates. What that looks like, let me navigate back here, and I'm going to open it up on my screen. Put them side by side so we can all see what we're working with here. Let me go back, Chris Fehrenbach here. Okay, so here's the screen we'll be working with. This is that download. It's a spreadsheet where we can put in a little bit of information. It'll generate what we need to enter in all of these boxes over here. So the first thing I'll talk about is fields highlighted in green will need to be entered into S2S. So anytime you see something in green, it's going to be something that goes over here in S2S for the budgeting. Starting off, I see that his academic salary has been pulled in by the system automatically at $100,000. So I'm going to go over here to academic salary and put $100,000 here to match what shows up over there. And that generates a full calculation of everything we need to put in. To explain what's going on, below that, it mentions the number of academic months. That just shows the base number of academic months. That's just standard for Tulane. We have 9 academic months and 3 summer. It calculates the monthly academic salary, and all that is their base salary divided by 9, makes 11,111. It also tells you the academic fringe rate, which is 19.4. And then here we put in the number of the requested number of academic months. So for this one, maybe I'll say 6 months that he's going to be working on this project. And I'll put in 6 here. 6 was already entered here, so that's nice and handy. And then it tells us that calculation, according to the spreadsheet, was the requested academic salary should be $66,667. Yep, that's what it shows here. Good way to check the math. The academic fringe benefits, $12,933, and that's what's entered here. So all of this is correct. If we just had academic salary and there was no summer salary involved in this, no summer work at all, you'll be okay with the way it's laid out right now. That's totally fine. But we're going to say that Chris Fehrenbach here is going to have, in addition to the academic months work, he's going to work 2 months on this for the summer. So the way this will work, below here, it's going to show the summer months base salary. This is automatically calculated because the monthly salary is this, and there's 3 summer months. So we need to make sure we go over here and put in exactly what it says over here. Whoops. 33,333 would be the base salary for any summer work that's being done. And then below that, we enter the number of summer months, whether it be 1, 2, or 3. I'm going to put him, we said we're going to give him 2 summer months. So I'm going to put in 2 summer months here. And now we have to check the calculations that were done. And this is where you're going to see why we need this spreadsheet. The requested summer month salary, $22,222. That's correct. We have a summer month fringe rate of 5.3, and that's what's throwing everything off here. Our summer fringe is 5.3%, but our academic is 19.4. So because of that, the system can't handle 2 fringe rates at once. That's why we have to use this calculator to help out. The summer fringe benefits, it calculated for us as 1,178. But down here in green shows you what we need to make sure is entered in on the left-hand side. The total requested salary should be $88,889. That's correct. The total fringe benefits should be $14,111. That's where this is wrong. Cayuse S2S tries to calculate the fringe. It doesn't know the difference between the summer and the academic fringe. It just does it all at 19.4. That's why it's off. We're hoping that gets fixed maybe one day. That would be nice. But for now, we have to make sure we manually change that fringe benefits to whatever shows up down here. So that would actually be 14,111. And all we do is make sure that total funds requested matches. So 103, 103. It's a really quick way to do everything. Any questions about why and how the spreadsheet works and why we need to do this? Good. And thank you again, Daisha, who's on the call now, that designed this this Excel spreadsheet to help get this straightened out. So basically, you just need to put in 1 or 2 bits of data here, and it calculates everything out. The only thing you really need to make sure you do is change this fringe benefits. And of course, you will need to enter the base summer salary. The system doesn't automatically populate that, but it tells you right here what the base salary is. So it's always going to do that for you. If I were to change that to 120,000, it would auto calculate. It would show me what my base salary would be over here. It's very interactive, very easy to use. So the same as we did with my budget, we need to fill in the budget for everything for the other project periods. We have periods 2 through 5 that we still need to add. The easy way to do that is the escalation tool. So once you filled out the first full budget period, you click on the staircase. It opens up that escalation tool. Our 2-lane default, again, is 3%. This can be changed if you need to. We're going to start the escalation at budget period 1. So it's going to read whatever's in budget period 1 and populate out everything else based on that. So we're going to go all the way through budget period 5. If you wanted to pre-escalate this budget, you could right here. This would be when maybe you're entering this in April or May, but the project starts July 1st, or it goes through July 1st. Maybe it starts now, but it goes into the next budget period where everyone's salaries will be increased. So we always want to pre-escalate if it does that. If you're expecting that, right, Tammy?
Right, and the reason for it is that, because we have that automatic feed from HR or payroll, whichever it is, it's feeding what is current. So naturally, that $100,000 is what the current base salary is. And if you're submitting a proposal now, chances are you're looking at next fiscal year. So that's why you want to pre-escalate. And I'll say that most of the time, that's what you're going to be doing.
Matter of fact, I'll do it for this one just to show how it works. So I'm going to escalate the salary and benefits over these 5 years, and we're just going to click it. And let's see, click that, and it should autofill everything out it'll have the correct 3% on every single year. And that's how you do the budget for each key person that you add. I'm going to minimize that and close it.
Walter,
Yes.
what happens if you keep accidentally pressing that escalation? Can you go back to the original and redo it?
Yeah.
So
I'll show that. You can actually click on manage key persons. If you make a mistake, let's say I made a mistake with mine. If you make a mistake and you don't like everything here, you can re-autofill everything and it'll pull in information, the default information. It'll still escalate out. But what if I wanted to actually escalate mine? This one I just replicated. If I just went back to it and hit escalate, it would escalate that perfectly fine. If I went back to escalate and hit replicate, it would replicate it fine too. But if you have any mistakes, you'd have to go through and manually delete every single one. And just know you can also overwrite values here too. Where we have an issue is what I'll talk about in a minute when we're actually doing the budget. And here, let me actually escalate this back again. We'll get into that now. I'm going to escalate that out and close it. When we're looking at the budget, if I try to escalate again, it's going to add another 3% on top of this again. We want to make sure we don't do that. So I'm going to show you here, whenever we talk about escalating the full budget, we're going to leave out the senior key persons when we escalate the full budget. Is that what you're talking about, Kathy? Yes, okay. Just to show again that everything has escalated properly, I'm in budget period 1 of 5, and I'm going to keep my eye on these numbers as I page through every budget period. And yes, it's going up by 3% each year, so we're looking good. What we're going to do next, we finished section A, that's the senior and key persons. So we're going to talk about other personnel. This is where you put in the to be named staff. So we'll say maybe 3 postdoctoral associates will be working on this. You'll put in the total calendar months for all postdoc associates here. So I'm going to say that they're working a full 12 months on this, and there's 3 of them, 3 times 12 being 36. The requested salary is the total salary of all of those postdocs. I'm just going to make up a number, say 60,000. And then for the fringe benefits, there's 2 ways to put the fringe benefits in. If you have a flat dollar value, you can always put that in for the fringe and it'll add everything together for you. But let's say you just know a percentage. What you could do is just put in 20%. As long as you put a percent sign after the last number and click off of it, it'll auto calculate what 30% of this requested salary is. So anytime you click back on that field, it'll let you know what calculation was used to come up with that as well. You can also put in a graduate student here if you wanted to. And add them. And we have extra lines for other personnel as well. It sums up the total number of other personnel right here at the bottom left. There's 4. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but the indirect cost types for sections A and B. So A and B both follow whatever the default indirect cost type we picked when we first started doing this proposal. We had the option to choose which rate we were going to use. That was going to be our default IDC rate. We can change this over here. We had the default set for organized research on campus. But if you change one of these, it's going to change the entire for A and B. So we're going to get into that in a moment. We're going to do a full budget, but then I'm going to show you how this will work in a minute here. In case those of you that, what if you're working in the School of Medicine, but you might have primate center postdocs working on this. So we'll show you that rate change in a moment. But for page 1, that's all there is. We're going to go over to page 2 now and fill out some more information. I see a page for new equipment row section here. So this is where you add in any equipment. It asks you to list the items and dollar amount for each item exceeding $5,000. That's the federal rules for everything. But at Tulane, we'd like you to put in anything over 2,500. Please add here. I'm going to add centrifuge. And we'll just say the centrifuge cost $6,000. And add that to the equipment. You can add as many equipment rows as you want. Delete them by clicking the red X. By default, the indirect cost type is excluded. This can be changed if needed, but by default, we keep equipment excluded from IDC. And we have our total equipment cost right here. Section D is travel. So this is domestic travel costs. I'll just say maybe $1,500 in domestic travel costs. The indirect cost type by default is set for whatever the default rate was picked. Section E, we normally leave blank. I always ask Tammy to expand on that about tuition and health insurance.
Okay, usually in section E, most often with an R01 application. Section E is for trainees, and on an R01, we know that trainees are not allowed. However, we do, of course, support that you want to pay tuition and fees or health insurance for the graduate students. So if you will do so, then you should put that in section F.
Right. Having said that, we're going to not put anything in E and go over to section F, which is on page 3. And this is a long list of other direct costs. So the way this works, for F1, we have materials and supplies. Maybe there's $2,000 in materials and supplies, and you can choose the indirect cost type for this one. We're going to leave it for now at our default rate of organized research. We're just going to say this is School of Medicine and leave it here. Publication costs, maybe $1,000 for that. If there's subawards that allocated IDC base will show up here. We'll cover that in a little bit. But each one of these you can select the indirect cost type for. We're just going to leave it at the default for right now. And you can add in your own other direct costs. And this is somewhere where you would put tuition and, put however much tuition is covered here. And indirect, is that included?
Excluded.
Excluded?
Excluded, yes.
Gotcha, thanks. And also health insurance we put here oftentimes.
And yeah, a separate line item, and that does have indirect cost assessed on it.
So I'd pick the indirect cost rate. Put some numbers in here. So we add in whatever other direct costs we have, put in the funds requested, and it sums up every direct cost here at the bottom. Section G shows the direct costs, and this is a total of all sections A through F together. Below that, we have all of our indirect costs. So the only indirect cost type we've used so far for this proposal, just to start out, we just used organized research on campus. So you might be thrown by looking at this indirect cost rate. Our indirect cost rate for fiscal year 23 was 52%. We have an upcoming change going on when we move to fiscal year 24, where the IDC is moved up to 53%. So what you're seeing here, the reason that says 52.833 is because it's averaging out how much of this proposal is going to be taking place between those years. So between those months, I think we said this proposal is starting May 1st. So those first 2 months, May and June, are going to be using that 52% rate. But then the other 10 months are going to be using that 53% rate, which makes this indirect cost rate average over to that. So that's why you're seeing that rate. If there's budget periods where the IDC rate doesn't change, obviously you won't see that fluctuate. You won't see the decimals probably. It'll just be a flat 53 if it doesn't change from year to year. But from what I've heard, it does tend to change quite frequently. So keep that in mind. And we're going to talk in just a second here about other indirect cost types. I just want to run over the rest of it here. So we have the total indirect costs populates here along with the cognizant federal agency. Section I just adds the direct and indirect costs together. Section J is any fees. You'd add the fee right here. And K would be the total costs and fee added together. Finally, you would put your budget justification. You'll probably see at the bottom in the errors and warnings, it's telling you right now that you need well, it's not telling you, but it should, a budget justification. We'll add that. So that's how you would do the first year of the budget. But let me show you page 4. I should show this too. This is just the summary, the cumulative budget of everything you've entered so far. So we're at 1.3 million, almost 1.4 right now. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to go back to page 1 of the budget and talk about the situation where what if, so I've started this proposal, the default indirect cost rate I have set to the organized research on campus. Now I'm going to have Tammy help me with this to talk about what happens when what if I have somebody that's working out of the primate center on this? If you want to demonstrate or talk about it, Tammy, while I put in the numbers for you.
Okay, so we're seeing that more often, that we may have inclusion or collaboration between Tulane National Primate Research Center and the School of Medicine. And of course, TNPRC has a different indirect cost rate. I believe it may be 75% now. So we're wondering, okay, so how do we show this? So what we're recommending is wherever you have budget categories that you can delineate or separate out what belongs to TNPRC, do so. Of course, in section A, you'll know by the very nature of who you have as key personnel, who's at primate center and who is not. But under the other personnel, we recommend that if there's a postdoc that's a TNPRC postdoc, then separate those out and put their budget information in. That way, it's a little bit helpful to you that when we're going to that indirect cost section, that you're able to see most of the categories that should be under that 75% threshold. Okay, you can go to the next page if you want. Okay, so of course, equipment, if you wanted to add equipment for TNPRC, you can do so and say that it is for TNPRC, but remember that if it's listed in this section, it's excluded from indirect cost anyway. The travel section is a little bit of a challenge because it does not provide extra lines that you actually can delineate that. That would be the only category that may be a little bit of a challenge for you. Okay, let's go to section, page 3. Materials and supplies. So say, and that's a big portion of TNPRC involvement in a project that, their lab supplies or whatever that they need. So why not separate that out?
Then we can change this indirect cost type. This is the advantage of this page with direct cost. You can actually, for each line item, pick what we want to use for it. So I'm going to pick TNPRC on campus for this one and say maybe 10,000 in supplies.
Okay, so let's move down to the indirect cost base. So naturally, we have to acknowledge that we need indirect costs for TNPRC. So Walter's adding that line in with the rate at 75%. And it automatically picked up the line that we were able to show that the indirect cost rate was for their site. However, we have other line items like postdoc and maybe some of the senior key personnel. So what we recommend that you do is you take the total direct cost and extract whatever belongs to TNPRC and include that in the indirect cost base by the 75,000. So Walter, you could just
75%, you mean?
I always say that 75%. Sorry about that. So let's say that it totaled up to like 30. Okay, what we have 32,000. Or yeah. Okay, so you would take that 32,000, subtract it from the 281 and anything else that should be excluded, and then your indirect cost base would be that whatever that difference is for the School of Medicine.
Right. I don't have the calculator on me right here. Let's see.
Yeah.
260. Whoops. 281. 349 minus 32,000. 249. 349.
Now, of course, you would also be excluding the equipment and anything else that anything else that is excluded from indirect costs, the equipment, the tuition. I think those were two. So keep in mind, of course, this is practice session. And remember, the indirect cost base may not necessarily equal the total direct cost that's listed there because there are other exclusions. And this is something, in proposals that we're seeing that are going out with 2 different sites. This is something that everyone has been having to do. It's not anything different, but we're just suggesting in the budget that you can go ahead and exclude those things or extract them so that the grants management specialist or whoever is reviewing the budget to give you your award, that they can readily see it. It's also a good idea to address it in the budget justification so that grants management specialist is not coming back to us and asking us how we figured this out.
And we can quickly see if something was changed. Anytime there's a red star, that means that you've overwritten whatever the automatic calculation was somewhere. So that's a good way for us to tell that you've done your due diligence. If we see that red star, that means you did in fact overwrite the pre-calculated base because you had that secondary indirect cost type. Any questions about how that worked? Can be a little tricky with that one. But from what I've heard, you guys have been doing this for a while, so hopefully you're used to it. See a smile or not. I love that. Good. Okay, so assuming everything worked out fine there, we've got all of our rates correct. We've got the weirdness of that summer fringe rate, and we're feeling all right about everything. We've already taken care of the first budget period. Again, we don't have anything for budget period 2. I'll use the drop down every now and then too. There's nothing on any of these other budget periods. So we need to take everything we've done in budget period 1 and copy or escalate it out to the next few budget periods. So all you do, just like we did in the key person section, up at the top, there's this staircase for replicate, escalate. You just click on that, and then this screen shows up. I'll make it a little bit bigger here. And it shows everything that we have the option to escalate or replicate. On the right-hand side, it shows the rate that we use. And again, we just use a flat 3% at Tulane for how we do our escalations. These can always be manually overwritten if you need to change those rates. And it shows the budget for each one, the budget category. But over here's the important part. You pick the ones that you want to escalate. I'm not going to escalate senior key person salary and fringe because we did that already. We've already taken care of the senior key persons. It's always best to do those separately, do them right at the beginning, knock them all out. It's much easier that way. If we were to escalate them again, it would add yet another 3% on, and it would kind of throw off some of the numbers. So I'm just going to leave those unchecked, and I'm going to check everything I want to escalate. I'm just going to pick all the way through F7. It also, because we added a couple of extra lines, it did add the tuition and health insurance that we put on. So I'm going to go ahead and escalate those as well. Do we escalate tuition and both of these health insurance?
I see them escalated.
Right. We do have to put in 3.0 for those because these weren't default. So these were just blank before. So you might have to put in your own rate there. But I've got one for materials and supplies too. I'm going to add that one too, Tammy?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. And the same rules go here for the entire budget. So we're going to start escalating a budget period 1, and we're going to end at budget period 5. Now it's possible, maybe you only want to escalate budget periods 1 all the way up to 3. And then you could always come back and say, start at budget period 3 and only replicate to budget period 5. So this, it's flexible. You can always escalate 1 or 2 years and then replicate afterward to fill out things. But, we're just going to do a straight up escalation for all 5 budget periods here. I'm going to go ahead and pre-escalate because I know this one's going to flow over to another increase in the next fiscal year. So I'm going to pre-escalate as well. And again, making sure I'm leaving off the key persons. Don't want to do that. And all you do is hit escalate. And it will escalate everyone's salaries. All the other fields. If you watch down in section B as I page through, it should show a 3% escalation every year. If I go to page 3 and have a look, sure enough, all of those are escalating. And then if I go to page 4 of the budget and look at the total, it's now gone up to 2.2 million, basically. So it auto-filled our budget. The key is do the first budget period, spend some time making sure it's correct. And then after that, it's just as simple as either replicating or escalating for the rest of the budget periods. Nice and easy. Let me check. I got a couple of errors done here. I want to see what those are. Let's see. Just really quickly, the ERA Commons username must be submitted for the, oh yeah, so if I click on this, if I forget, again, always check these errors. I left off something. I left this off. If I click it, I forgot to put in my ERA Commons name. So I'm going to do that, and that'll get rid of that warning. Before I cover this error, I see another warning from NIH saying I forgot to do his ERA Commons name as well. So I'm just going to put in just something. That'll get rid of that warning. And we're almost done. This right here, but I'm going to talk about this. Select a budget to be included with the submission. So this is really neat. We need to pick a budget. Right now, we have the R&R like detailed budget, and we have the modular budget. We can pick either one. If I look at the modular budget, it will autofill for us. So it takes everything in that detailed budget and creates a modular budget for us. This budget is probably not going to be the best one. We're just kind of throwing numbers out there, so it won't be the best representation of what would normally go out the door. But it did make a modular budget for us right here.
I really like that feature.
Yeah.
That the department has the option of seeing a detailed budget internally that they can refer to if when awarded. So that's really, I really like this.
Yeah. But I still have to select which budget to be included. So if I hit the checkbox next to this one, I've cleared out all the warnings and errors, and this would be ready to go. This whole proposal would be ready. If I try to select both, it's going to tell me, sorry, both a modular and a detailed budget have been added. You can only select one. So it won't let you try to do both. It'll make sure that you cannot submit this. You have to get rid of one. If I tried to just do the modular budget here, it would give me a warning from NIH saying the direct costs are greater than $250,000. So it really does a good job of making sure you're within the limitations of NIH. So I'm just going to say, never mind, we're going to do the detailed R&R budget here. And that's how budgeting works. Any questions before we talk about subawards? Good, good. The hardest part is over. Thank you for your help with that, Tammy. All right. The last thing we'll talk about is subawards. So if you have subawardees on this, I'm going to show you how this will work. We're going to go to the subaward budget attachment page here. There are a few options. We could always create a subaward for that organization. It's not what we ideally want to do. We want whoever we're giving the money to, we want them to do the subaward and send the subaward information to us so we can just import it. I know that doesn't always happen from what I've heard. If we had to create a subaward, we would just go into here and create a subaward. We'd have to pick the organization. We do have Johns Hopkins in here as a test. And basically it would bring us to a small version of this proposal where we put in the budget and everything. But we don't want that to happen because administratively, we would have to add every university into the software and put them in and add any PIs that are needed. It takes some time. We'd have to talk to us in sponsored projects, and we'd have to set it up for you to help out beforehand. By far, the easiest way to do everything is to make sure that they can do it for us. They can do the subaward. The good news is Cayuse has a website that tells you how to do everything. It's Subawards.com. So we're going to recommend that any schools we work with that send us their subaward budget, go here to Subawards.com, and it'll give them 3 different options of a way to give us their subaward. The easiest way to do it, or the best way to do it, I found, is they can create a username and password here on Subawards.com, and it'll guide them. There's a user guide, and it'll show them exactly how to do the subaward, how to fill everything out. The same way we just did everything in the budget, they'll have a mini version of that, and they'll fill it out. They'll create it, enter the data. They'll see all the same errors and warnings that we see. They don't have to use Cayuse, the full software. They don't have to subscribe to them. They just need to sign up for an account here. And then they will export the file, and it's going to be as a .cayuse, the same way you would see a .pdf or a .xls file. It'll create this file and they'll email it to us. And all we do is import it into our system. And I'll show you how good that looks when we do it. We'll talk about the other two methods too, but okay, say you got an email from that other university for the subaward. All you do is click import subaward, and we're going to name it test subaward. I'm going to browse on my computer to find it. And I know it's right here. It's got a .cayuse file. I can tell it's not readable by my computer because it's got a blank page here, which means no software will open this. So I'm just going to open it with this and click import. And what happens, it'll read the start and end date that they put on their subaward and compare it against what we have on our start and end dates. It'll match them based on our start and end dates are going to be the one that everything matches to. So if they have a 1-year budget period, it's going to be overwritten by whatever our budget period is. So if they were off by a few days or off by a couple of months, we're the deciding factor on what the start and end date will be. That's all this is telling you. And then I'm just going to link the subaward. It's going to automatically fill in all that information. It brings in their PI or co-investigator, as it were. It'll bring in their project and performance site, and we just hit finish. Now, when that happens, I want you to take a look up here at our breadcrumb trail / folder hierarchy, and you can see we're in that test subaward looking at it live right now. If you needed to go back to the actual proposal, you'd have to go back 1 step and 2 steps. You can kind of hover over it, and it'll tell you to go back to the main proposals tab. So this is just a way to navigate back and forth. And here's that subaward that we added. I'm going to click it again just to go in and look at it. And this has been fully filled out. I'm looking at budget period 1. Let me go to period 2. It looks like this was escalated properly too. I can even look at it and see there's no errors, no warnings. So they did this one perfectly. There's really nothing much to do with this one. I'm going to look at the key persons, and they brought their key person over. There's a check box saying this is now included in the prime proposal. You'll see this in a minute. We'll show you what that looks like. And if I look at the performance sites, they put in their own performance site, and it will be brought into the main proposal. It's just so much easier than us having to ask them for all this information and have to enter it all ourselves. And it would be too time consuming. Why not just have them fill in this bare bones amount of information themselves? It's really not a lot. So I'm going to go back to the prime sponsor to show you what happens. Again, this has a checkbox saying it is included in the prime. And I'm going to go back and show you. If I go to the key persons section now, and whoops, let me minimize this and this. We now see it has that third person in here. There's a little thing here, a little icon that says source from link subaward. So we can tell that this was brought in by that subaward. If I expand it, it won't let me edit it because it's on the subaward. I can't edit it from the prime, but I could always click this to go into the subaward and look at it. And if you need to change anything, you can. Then I'll just go back to there. And it's already linked. Same for performance sites. If I look at the performance sites, now it's added that other performance site because they're doing some of the work there. It has their organization. Everything's filled out correctly. If I needed to view it and make any changes, I would just click that and it would bring me right to it. But I'll go back to my prime. And now I'm going to look at the budget again. I'm going to go to, I believe, budget period 3. So you can see it brought in that allocated IDC base for the subaward as well. And that caps at 25,000. So if I go to the next budget period, nothing's going to show up there. That's as easy as it is for that first option. We really like people to use that subawards.com site. But they have a couple of other options too, and it lets them know here. They're not going to make somebody sign up for a website. I know we all hate registering for sites all the time. This won't spam you with anything, bad emails or anything, but they can always use the Grants.gov forms repository. This will bring them to Grants.gov where they could download the subaward budget and send us that PDF, and we can import the PDF, and that's fine too. We found from testing, it's subawards.com seems to work a little bit better. But the PDF option is there too. And thirdly, if they're already working in a system workspace, they can just download that and extract the subaward budget as a PDF and fill it out and email it to us too. And that's fine. I'm going to do one of those to show you what that might look like. Just going to go to the subaward again. I'm going to import a second subaward. I'm going to say this one's from LSU. And I'm going to try to find that PDF. I've got a lot of them here. Okay, yeah, here's an LSU subaward on our budget. I'm going to open it, import it. And I can already tell there's some issues because they don't have any start or end dates. You know what? I'm just going to say maybe it's okay. I'm just going to import it, link it in, see what happens here. It brought in Mickey Mouse. It brought in LSU Health Science Center. I'm going to finish. So with this one, I can tell there's some issues. I can look at the bottom of this page and see that there's 12 errors and 1 warning already with this. If I go to the next budget period, I can see there's some inactive budget periods. So that might be what's causing some errors. If I go to the key persons, none of the key person information is filled out. None of the performance side is filled out. So this one definitely has some errors and warnings that we need to fix up. I mean, they could send us partial information and we could fill out the rest if we knew it. But, you know, this isn't the ideal way. We would hope they'd have a better PDF done for us.
Right. And the reason why the key persons the key persons not completed is, remember, if they're sending to us a budget that they downloaded a form from Grants.gov, that's all it is. It's just the budget. So those other things that Subawards.com allows them to complete, such as their performance site, their key persons, all of those things, that will be missing and you will have to populate that. So that's the good thing about Subawards.com, that it gives you more than just the budget form.
And their user guide is really good too. It's not even a long user guide. It's like 5 pages. That's it. So like, it's not this really long booklet they have to follow. It just shows them really quickly, if they were to use Subawards.com, how to do it. Yeah, if it was just a PDF, at least hopefully they'd have all the budget part correct. We just have to reach out to them again, or they might have to, along with that PDF, send us their performance site and key person info, and we'd have to enter that. But it's better than nothing. It's better than us having to go in and make new stuff all by ourselves. So
I have a question.
Mhm.
So once I say that I have a subaward, is that automatically going to come up on my screen, and then I would take that information for the subaward.com and email to the sub to ask them to register and submit your information this way? When am I going to get that notice, like how it came up on the screen that you have a subaward.com or either Grants.gov or Workspace or Assist? Once I click in the system, I have a subaward, this is going to populate?
No, you
No?
have to, if we know there's a subaward coming to us, so correct me if I'm wrong, we need to let that, I don't know how that process works for you guys. How the
I'm
communication.
thinking that we take the Subawards.com link and we're emailing that to them, and we're asking them to complete their subaward, their budget and whatever through this system.
Okay.
Or they can choose whichever ones they want. And then when they send that to you, they're going to email that to you, and you're going to save, the file will be saved. If they use Subaward.com for Cayuse, it'll be a .cayuse file. So when you're going to add your subaward, then you're going to import that from where you have it saved. So the system doesn't automatically send something out to the subaward. You're actually sending them the link.
And where is the link? The link is going to be, is it listed in Cayuse, the link that I need to send to the sub?
It is not here, but you know what? That might be an enhancement request. What if maybe we
Right.
can't add anything to S2S as a system, because this is built in hardwired with Grants.gov information, but
What about an SP?
if we're still, again, we might be working on the routing sheet. Like I showed earlier, when we had that summer salary and fringe calculator here, maybe we can add that to the subaward section. That's a great idea. So maybe I'll put something here, linked to subawards.com.
Yeah.
I'll mention IT. That would be another little helpful thing. So at least they have a link here to remind you,
Right.
and maybe some help text to remind if you have a subaward, to make sure you contact your subawardee.
That's great. Thanks so
That's
much.
a great idea.
Giselle. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
No problem.
Thanks, Giselle.
You're
I
welcome.
love doing these. Got a new idea every time. That's great. Just to show you really quick, I'm gonna go back to my budget since I added a second subaward, just to show you that it added another 25,000 here too. I had 2 subawards and the allocated IDC base went up to 50,000. But if I look at these subawards, this one looks ugly. It's got 12 errors, 1 warning. I'm just gonna detach it. I'm gonna remove it. You can always remove a subaward by clicking that little red unlink. I'm gonna unlink and delete the subaward so that I don't even see it again. And that'll remove it from the budget. Let's see, I've got some warnings here. Let's see what those say. Here's a good one. The role of co-PDPI is not used by NIH to designate multiple PDPIs. Okay, I'm going to click on that, see what it's talking about. And I can see the imported subaward that I got. Sarah Jean Hall put herself as the co-PD, but that won't work for this proposal. So I need to change that. It won't let me change it here in key persons, but it's linked to that subaward. All I do is click on that and change her project role to co-investigator. I anticipate that might happen a lot where we might have some issues, but these errors and warnings are always going to let you know what's wrong. Let me jump back. The rest of the warnings I have are, let's see, I've got direct cost requests. We're not going to worry too much. I just made up some numbers, so these budgets aren't going to be ideal. Let me find a good warning we can fix. Here we go. We got a warning from Cayuse saying you linked in a subaward, but I didn't check the box for it. So I need to check that box. It's going to remind you if you've started working on a subaward, it's going to say, hey, wait a minute, are you sure you want to submit without it? So that'll get rid of one of the warnings. Just a nice reminder. Let's see what else. Another Cayuse warning, the consortium contractual arrangements attachment is missing, but the subaward's contractual costs are budgeted. So it's going to let you know, maybe you need to put that contractual arrangement in there too, because you put a subaward. And we got a warning from NIH saying the resource sharing plan attachment may be required for all applications with 500,000 or more in direct costs. So, it thinks about all these things from NIH, or, Cayuse has their own tips that they add to make sure you're warned about anything you need to add here. But we're going to pretend there's no errors or warnings just because I want to finish up the training and show you everything here. We do have one more optional page. This was automatically brought in from that opportunity, but we're not going to include it. We're going to leave it blank. It's just a PHS assignment request form. We're not going to add anything here. But we've covered everything. We've got everything we want to submit to the sponsor. So I'll talk about the way this works whenever this is ready to go. So if you've done your due diligence and gotten these errors, warnings, and info down to 0, and you're confident with this proposal, remember, you still need to do the routing sheet too. We need to have this routing sheet completed. So you might be jumping back and forth, doing some of this, maybe doing some of the stuff in Cayuse sponsored projects. The cool thing is, what if you wanted, here, for example, one of our required routing documents is the budget. Well, all you got to do is go to this print button in the budget section of S2S, and you can print the budget. You just hit print. Let me get this bigger. And there's the budget. So you should have everything here. You could copy, download this PDF and just attach it over here in the budget. So as you're filling the S2S routing sheet, S2S out, you'll still be working on the routing sheet. When the routing sheet has everything completed as you've been used to, and you get all green checks, you'll route it for review. The general information page is still going to show you've got your linked S2S record. It'll show the status as not submitted. When we get this routing sheet all the way moved up to approved, then in sponsored projects, we're going to look at this approved routing sheet. We're going to see that there's a proposal S2S record in it, and we're going to click on it and go over this. We're going to look through it. I mean, we might do it beforehand too, right, Tammy? It might, depending on how this goes.
Yeah, all of these, it's fluid, and these things, some of these things happen simultaneously. So, the routing, remember that for routing the proposal, the minimum that's required is the summary or scope of work, abstract, budget justification. Those
Right.
3 things move this forward to be approved as a routing.
And there's, these are separate modules. We've got sponsored projects for the routing and S2S for the Grants.gov. they're linked here on the first page, but this routing sheet is not going to prevent anything in an emergency. If there's some sort of emergency where this has to go out the door, we can always submit this ahead of time. It's not the ideal way to do it, not ahead of time, before the routing is done. But we don't talk about that, Tammy. That's probably shouldn't happen very often.
Right, and I mean, if we're in the situation, just like we were with the PDF, if for some reason something's not finished its routing, we need to talk about the submission.
Right.
And, you know, of course, technical issues, we're not gonna let a proposal sit because of the SP if it has a technical issue, but, you know, we communicate just like we always do.
Mm-hmm. And what would happen is once we saw that this routing sheet was showing approved, and you know, let me see, I'll look in my, well, I won't do that right now. Here, I'll open in a new tab just to show you what we would see on the sponsored projects end. We would kind of filter by approved. And if we saw an approved proposal, we'd open it up. And the first thing we do is look down here and see the proposal's S2S record. We click on it and we would look through, review everything. We go to electronic submission, and I can't show this because I don't have permissions to route this. The only people on the call that do have that are Tammy and Kathy. So Tammy or Kathy or one of our other two people that have the option or the ability to do this would submit this to Grants.gov, and we would see a proposal submission history here that it was successfully submitted. I'll show you, I think I got one done already. Let me back out. Here we go. If I went into the electronic submission and looked at the history, it would show the portal tracking number here, and you could click on it. It'll bring you right to it. And it shows that it was successfully received by S2S portal. This is just a training instance, so it's not going to have a lot of information, but just know that this is where the back and forth communication between Grants.gov and proposals S2S ends. It'll just let you know that it's been received. As far as updates on how the proposal is going after that, you'd have to talk to sponsored projects, but we would be updating this from approved to submitted to sponsor. And whenever you would log into your routing sheet in Cayuse SP, you would see the status as submitted. So you would know that we submitted it. So anytime, I can't really demonstrate it now, but you would see a green check that this proposal's S2S record was submitted. And then when it gets funded, we would get that funding notification, and then we would go in and mark this as a funded proposal. So that's one way you would know about how your projects are going. Again, Cayuse sponsored projects, the SP routing, the main thing we've been training on for the last few months. That's your system of record. That's a good place to go to get through everything and to show your links to system to system. Anything else I need to cover here? Let me look. And of course, if you need to print out the whole thing, you could always print out the entire proposal by selecting all and generating a PDF. And yeah, Tammy, what else did you want to talk about?
I just wanted to reassure them with SP and routing, even if the routing form, if you have an S2S proposal that's linked in the routing form, even once although the routing form goes all the way through proposal, up through approval, you can still use the link. It's still active in there. Before we were saying with SP, with the proposal form itself, once it's in approved, you can't make any changes on the form, but you still can get to that link. It's still active at any time.
I'm just going to manually move it to submitted to sponsor just to show you how that looks. So yeah, it's locked down. I'm not able to make changes, but you can still see that record, even if it's locked down. Yeah, they've intentionally separated them out. So S2S kind of lives in its own little world, but this link is what connects the two right here. All right, anything else we need to talk about? I think we are pretty much done. We got an extra 25 minutes for questions, or if anything you guys want to talk about, feel free.